I am Dr. Nick, the Apostle Paul's messenger in this 21st century world.
What message would the Apostle Paul deliver to a 21st century American audience if he were alive today?
The author has written
an open letter about creation and life. By trusting God in the miracle of new life.
Greetings, I'm Dr. Nick, and this is the Apostle Paul's message to the 21st century, and I'm the Apostle Paul's messenger as a result of that. What I'm doing tonight is episode 8. Episode 7, which I completed, I guess, at the end of last week, focused in on the political history of the abortion pill from 1980, when it was first developed in Europe and France, to 2000, when it got approved by the FDA under President Bill Clinton. I'm going to review some of that now. I'm not going to go back to 1980. And then we're going to move on to 2025. And next one, number 9, is I'm going to actually go through and explain the names of the abortion pills, when they take them, what effect they have, what's the process, and what does the person taking the pills, what do they go through, basically. And also we're going to take a look at what some of the side effects are and what some of the negativity is in regard to people's experience in taking the pills. I think this is important because at this stage in the abortion industry, these abortion pills, are the most widely used form of abortion. It's not going into a Planned Parenthood clinic and having a doctor surgically remove the child. That doesn't happen. That happens in about 32% of the time, but around 63 to 68%, those are the numbers I've heard recently, are people taking the pill at home and aborting the child in their home. And we'll get through some of the gruesome parts of how that works in the next episode. But in this episode, I want to just continue to show the problems that were being addressed now legally as a result of the decisions that were made back in 2000 and some of the decisions that were made between 2001 and 2025. So let me do this real quick. In September of 2000, President Bill Clinton was about to finish his presidency. Most of his presidency, he wanted to get the abortion pill approved. Okay. So it's a couple months before he's going to leave, and there's a little bit of a panic situation here. How's this all going to work? There were a lot of things that occurred that helped it to this point, and we discussed that in episode 7. But for now, we're just going to take a look at some decisions that were made immediately around September of 2000. Okay, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, characterized pregnancy as an illness and the abortion pills as the therapeutic remedy for those abortions. What they had to do was fast track the clinical trial period. At the point of, I guess in this around September of 2000, there were about $8 million had been spent on clinical trials. The normal amount of money that is really spent in trying to determine the effectiveness and efficiency of any drug usually takes about $100 million, and it usually happens over about a 6-year period. In this case, it happened over a 6-month period, and there was only $8 million spent doing clinical trials, which is extremely insufficient, okay, and irresponsible. But what they did was they used a clause that was also used, by the way, with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that was that there was an emergency situation and they had to get the drug through the clinical trial periods quickly so that the public can receive the benefits of the drug. And in the case of COVID-19, it was the injection some people were required to take. In the case of the abortion pill, that same emergency rationale was used back maybe 20, 21 years earlier. And that because now abortion was looked at as an illness and that a pregnancy was used as determined as an illness, the abortion pill as therapeutic, it needed to be into the hands of people quickly so that they wouldn't go through any kind of situation where they try to abort the child themselves. What happened was that it was fast-tracked. Now it's in the hands of doctors. And as it stood, doctors were the only ones that were allowed to prescribe it. And that if a person wanted the drug, the pills, they would have to see the doctor. The doctor would have to then, monitor them and so forth as they're taking it home and keeping in touch with the doctor while they're at home. The other thing that happened is that the FDA under Clinton made a decision that the drug can only be taken up to 7 weeks from the onset of her last menstrual period. The difficulty there that people were experiencing and complaining about was that, by the time 7 weeks arrive, a woman has some idea that she's pregnant. She might even take a pregnancy test, find out she's pregnant. Now she's got to decide, how she's going to handle this thing. If she wants to take the pill in her home, she's going to make a decision before the end of the 7th week, which was a problem. And we're going to see how that was handled. But Clinton said that it would only be for 7 weeks. Okay. And that it had to be under the direction of a doctor. But it was still legal, even though it hadn't gone through the proper clinical trials. The FDA also ignored evidence that there were medical complications, even more so than in surgical abortions. They experienced some of this during the trial period, but also it was a European experience as well that they were kind of keeping in mind, how was this drug, which was used back from 1980, how was it affecting individuals? Okay, so, but they did ignore some of that evidence because they said it had to be fast-tracked. Okay, remember that the key to this, getting out in the marketplace, was that it was an emergency situation. It really wasn't an emergency situation, but they created a situation where pregnancy was an illness and the drugs, the abortion pills, were therapeutic, and there was a demand for it, and they justified it that way. Okay. They also ignored, and this is the part that gets me a little riled up. They did not do any kind of long-term investigation as to the long-term effect that these pills would have on young women. Like if a girl took it when she was 16 years old or 18 or in their early 20s, never having, maybe being pregnant before, using the pills for the first time, going through contractions, eliminating the child in her home, in a friend's home or wherever she might be doing it. The issue here was not so much that they were young and they were maybe inexperienced when it came to being pregnant, but have any long-term effect in their ability to get pregnant in the future. See, so this might have been a one-time situation, and then the young lady at some point decides to marry and have a family and can't conceive. So some of that might be happening because there wasn't any definitive study on whether enough that we were able to identify people from a study group. I know that it's been 25 years since this drug was approved, but that doesn't mean anything when it comes to verification of whether or not it affected people in a negative way, because people would have to voluntarily decide to come forth with that information, and they might not even conclude that they're not having a child because of that pill. Okay, so none of this was done in an organized way, and there's no way that we can really know whether there's going to be long-term effect or not. So that there's a danger there in taking it now, because you might be a young person and not realize that this could be something in your future that you're going to have to face. Okay, so that's the story with President Clinton. Then George W. Bush became president in 2000 and January 2001, and left office in January 2009. George W. Bush was very sympathetic and worked well with the pro-life movement, but he did not do anything to change the FDA's approval process, and nothing happened there that was significant. Then 2009 to 2017, Barack Obama becomes president, and Obama decided to do some very drastic things. He extended the 7-week period that Clinton instituted from the moment of the onset of the menstrual period to the end of the 7th week that you can actually use these pills. Okay. He extended it to 10 weeks. So there's 3 extra weeks where people can, talk to other friends about, decide what to do, get themselves ready to go home and have the abortion at home. So he gave him an extra 3 weeks. It was at that time, too, that Planned Parenthood, when Obama became president, that they had set a goal that they wanted the chemical abortions, which they called chemical abortions, or the medicines used to abort the child. They decided that by 2020 that would be the primary method of abortions in this country. And as a result, as of now, 2025, the numbers that I'm hearing about and that I've read about and what some advisors have indicated to me is that it's anywhere between 63 and 68% of all abortions today that are happening in the home with women using the pill, all right, or in dormitories or in some hotel room. Also, Obama made a major decision that if there were any complications that a woman experiences during this process, and they went to an emergency room to get treated for that emergency situation, that the emergency room or clinic or wherever they used at the time could not report to the CDC the diagnosis and the problems that we're experiencing. So the CDC would not have that data at all. The only data that could be sent to the CDC under the FDA's mandate was if there was a death as a result of the abortion pill, and there have been deaths as a result of the abortion pill. So those things are recorded, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers next time we meet, all right, and some of the side effects. But as you can see, extending the period from the onset of the menstrual period to 10 weeks now opened up a window of opportunity. And with Planned Parenthood's goal of meeting that the majority of abortions would happen by the year 2020, there was all that effort on their part as well. And not having the information necessary to determine what kind of problems women were facing on their own or in an emergency situation. There wasn't the data there that people can rely upon. The only data that they had were if there was a tragedy as a result of it. So there have been people that have died as a result of using the pill, and we will get into what the cause of some of those deaths were. Donald Trump became president, and he, like George W. Bush, even though he was very supportive of the pro-life movement and was even considered by some people as the pro-life president, he did not do anything that would interfere with the FDA's approval process and methods of dealing with the abortion pill. That wasn't addressed by Trump either, or his administration. By the way, I'm being told that the Bobby Kennedy, who is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, is examining the FDA's determinations and seeing whether they were followed adequately and so forth, and possibly making a decision during Trump's second term. But that hasn't happened either, okay? And I don't know to what extent that is happening. Okay, so let's go now to 2021 to 2025. During the presidency of Joe Biden. What happened here was, because COVID was in its probably the height of the COVID epidemic, it was in 2021, 2022, and there were people getting vaccinated and so forth. There was still a fear element in the country that, nobody wanted to catch this thing, all right? So there was an attempt by the College of Obstetrics and Gynecology to have the FDA soften some of the requirements of how to get the pill. They didn't want the women that were eventually going to use the pill to go to a clinic or to go to a doctor's office and get that particular pill in person. They approved of it being given through a mail order process. So a woman would be able to go to an online pharmacy and order the pill and have it delivered to her home and take the pill by reading the instructions that were in the material sent to her, and with no doctor present, no communication with a doctor that had prescribed the medicine anywhere. I guess you can always call the emergency room and ask questions, or call a doctor's office and ask questions. That doctor didn't specifically prescribe that drug. It was received through a mail order process. And not only mail order, but also retail pharmacies were given permission, at least initially, to sell the drug over the counter, all right? Or I guess because a pharmacist is not going to prescribe something or give you a drug that wasn't signed off by a doctor. They were able to get the abortion drug. In December of 2021, the FDA voluntarily adopted a new rule permanently relaxing the requirements that the pill be obtained in person. Now the mail order process becomes the fundamental method of getting it, instead of going to a retail pharmacy or getting it, asking the pharmacist some questions, even going to your doctor and talking to him about it, is that now you had the freedom to go completely through a mail order process. And that was all done during this pandemic, and using the pandemic as the reasoning why these decisions were being made. It just seems like there was a lot of laxity in the FDA's statutory responsibilities. Okay, Congress prescribed statutory requirements on how the FDA needed to act, but they also gave them permission in an emergency situation. And appears that that emergency situation was kind of loosey-goosey because the abortion pill now was something they determined to be an emergency. You would hope that that doesn't happen in a lot of different cases, but it certainly happened then, and it allowed that drug to be in retail pharmacies, in the internet, delivered by mail order. Then in June of 2022, the Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade. I should say this is that before the FDA made the permanent rule that you don't have to obtain the drug in person, there were restrictions before that you needed a doctor to prescribe the pills and to monitor it, but it was not after December of 2021. Okay, they permanently relaxed the requirement that the pill be obtained in person. Maybe a doctor could prescribe it. If you called your family doctor, he might be able to prescribe it and then talk to you about it. But I didn't hear much that was a method that people used. Okay, they basically used the online pharmacies and having the drug sent that way. And then in January of 2023, the FDA further relaxed rules allowing any retail pharmacy, that, not just certain ones that they had decided were responsible, allowing any retail pharmacy to be certified to fill the abortion pills. So obviously they would have to apply for certification and be approved, but it was wide open. So now they're really getting the drug out there as best they can. So what's happening now is, now that Roe v. Wade was overturned on the federal level, still abortions were allowed legally on the state level, and the war between the people in the medical community, individual citizens, state officials, and so forth, the war between and political ideology as well started happening. So you start seeing a lot of infighting happening now, and we're going to talk in a moment about a case, very significant case that was made by the Supreme Court. Okay, but up until that point, most of the decisions were being made on the state level, not the federal level. There were attempts, like that one pharmacy actually sued all the states that outlawed the pill, saying that because it was approved by the FDA, which is a federal agency, that superseded any state laws that were enacted, that the federal law superseded. But that didn't go anywhere. Okay. And then in March of 2023, Wyoming became the first state that completely banned the pill. In April of 23, the next month, or a couple of months since then, 17 states in the District of Columbia, a judge ruled that it was a temporary injunction that the FDA could not reduce access to the abortion pill for those states or the District of Columbia. I don't think they were going to do it anyway, but these states wanted to make sure that they had the protection of the FDA, and the judge allowed that. The next month, May 2024, Louisiana classified the abortion pills, as controlled substances, just like they would say with heroin or cocaine or anything like that, barbiturates, amphetamines, that they were controlled dangerous substances. And there was a penalty if you were caught with these pills and you didn't have any proof that they were given out by through a retail pharmacy on the internet or anything like that. So what happened was, and it's happening now in 2025, there's a lot of black market distribution of the abortion pills across state lines. So that's happening right now. But one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is the biggest case that occurred in 2000. It started in 2016. These things become issues, and they take some years to get through the juridical process. All right, but a group called the Alliance. These are doctors that were pro-life doctors. Okay, they sued the FDA. They called themselves the Alliance of Hippocratic Medicine, and they were successful in getting a Texas judge to ban the abortion pill nationally. Okay, because the FDA, according to the judge, capitulated by reneging on their statutory responsibility, which I was talking about, and approving the use of the pill without sufficient oversight and giving access to the general public. Okay, so the judge said that they violated basic protocol, the trial chemical trials that should have taken place and didn't, and that they capitulated politically, and that they could not, that it had to be taken off the market. Okay. Now, obviously, there was an appeal that was allowed to happen. So the drug continued to be used pending the appeal, and the appeal gave the FDA permission to continue. All right, that the judgment of the Texas judge was withdrawn. So the Alliance for the Hippocratic Medicine, those doctors now went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court made a decision that the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine did not have standing to contest the decisions of the FDA. And I'm not sure, all those rules on what you can have permission to sue the federal government for or not, but they didn't have standing. Now, the Supreme Court did not rule on the drug itself. They did not rule on abortion again, and they didn't make any judgments about FDA criteria and decision making at all. Okay, the only thing they said was that the Alliance for the Hippocratic Medicine, that group of pro-life doctors, did not have standing. So that drug now is still on the market and is still being marketed through, and it's being distributed through the mail order, and women are using it and they're having abortions at home. So that's it for now. I hope that this has helped you a little bit to understand that these are not easy situations, that these drugs are out there. We're going to talk about the drugs. We're going to talk about the side effects. We're going to talk about the dangers in the next episode. And then you can make your own decisions at that point. Okay, I've given you the political rationales that were used, which I think were extremely sloppy. I'm surprised that our government even allowed that to happen. And the FDA, which is really made up of doctors, that they would allow something like this to happen in the home environment with young people, and it's a tragedy. Okay, so we'll talk more about that in episode 9. But for now, stay strong in your faith, steadfast in living the truth, supportive, very supportive of the sanctity and dignity of the human person. Please, let's protect the human person under every condition that we're bombarded with. If people only realized that every person, me, you, your family members, friends, people you work, God created those people for a purpose. They are willed by God. They were given a divine spirit. God decided to share his divine life with you and me. That's what makes us, that's what sanctifies us, is that we're made in the image and likeness of God. And that's what gives us dignity as human beings. That's why we have to respect each other. And that's not happening. Obviously, we have crime all over the place. We have prostitutions. We have women being used in the slave trade, drugs coming across the borders, mass shootings, parents not being responsible for their children, children in foster care, child abuse, you name it. It's happening. At some point, I'm going to explain why it's happening from a political, sociological, which I've been trained in both of those disciplines. That's going to happen. I'm going to present what I think is the underlining core root of where this evil really stems from. And then I just want everyone to remember, you are not a mistake. Okay? That's my tagline when I end. You are not a mistake. God knew you long before, at the beginning of creation. He knew you. He knew that you were going to be born in a certain period. He knew who you were. He knew what gifts you had. Your DNA is unique to you, to no one else. Okay? God knew you. He created you. You are not a mistake. Live out your life to the fullest. God bless. So thanks for joining me today on Dr. Nick, the Apostle Paul's messenger. I hope this message touches your heart and gives you something to consider. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you never miss a conversation, and click that bell. That's important. Okay? And if you found value in today's discussion, please share it with your friends who might need to hear it. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So connect with me by emailing me at drnick, that's Dr. Nick, drnick, Apostle Paul's Messenger at gmail.com. Send in your questions and let's keep this conversation moving. Until next time, stay strong in the faith, stand firm in the truth, and remember, you are never alone on this journey. God bless.